Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Welcome to the show today. It's a great day. It was a great day when I opened my eyes this morning because I declared the day to be great before I even opened my eyes. And I hope you did the same thing. You know, as we declare for ourselves the truth of who we are, we have an expectation to see it unfold in our life. It's powerful. God works for us by working through us. And so today I'm going to pick up where I left off last time I was working from the Part 5 section of the Science of Mind, what we often call the textbook, and it is it's entitled Teachings of the New Testament from the Teachings of Jesus, and we got through to about page 433, and I covered this section called Judge Not, that ye not be judged. And I'm gonna hit that today. We're gonna drill down that a little bit before we move on to the rest of it. But before we get started, I want to go back to this is Living the Science of Mind. If you happen to have a copy, I'm on page number 7 here, and read from the bottom. It says, we're talking about, this idea, this new thought, this religious science of mind and spirit, we often say it's a faith, a philosophy, it's a way of life. It is a doingness. It's not just an intellectual exercise, so to speak, in spirituality, but it's actually a livingness in a spiritual universe with an internal knowing that we're a part of that universe very intimately, and that the divine principle, that which we call God, is expressing in our life, but it's expressing as our life also. And as we become aware of this, and we become aware that there are universal laws, and we can put them into practice in our life as spiritual tools, that miraculous things unfold. And that's one of the great things, one of the great lessons that this fellow called Jesus, we call him the master teacher, brought into the world some 2,000 years ago. So picking up today, I want to read here, talking about this concept. Ernest Holmes writes, he says, too many people in our field mistake a declaration of belief in spirit for an effective mental treatment. In other words, an effective affirmation and declaration for our life experience. He says, no greater mistake can be made. We must not only believe that God or divine reality is all power, but we must use our belief in a definitive way. He's talking about using our belief, not just having a belief, but putting it into practice in our life. He says this is what constitutes correct mental practice. And correct mental practice is a way, it's a mind state. It is a way of interacting with the world. Now, we can talk about it as a process, but when we embody it, it really does. It becomes a mindset, and we can utilize it in our day-to-day life experience. Got a couple more things I want to read from this as we move forward. A spiritual treatment, to be effective, must be spoken from a consciousness which knows itself to be the presence, the power, and the activity of God. When we speak our word, when we go to that silent place, when we in our mind make our connection with spirit, with God, and we call it speaking our word, we need to know that we've got to know that it is the presence of God speaking through us. It's more than just words that we have passed through our mind, and as we do so with an understanding that there is a power and a presence for good in the universe that responds to us. And responds to us at the level of our belief and our understanding. And as I get into this today, that's why I want to spend a little time on this section on judgment, because it's so important that we have a good grasp of that as we go through our day-to-day life experience. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world where judgment seems to be a heavy factor, and we'll get to that too. He says here, spiritual power is of no particular value to us until we use it. There is a spiritual power that is available to us, but it does us no good until we use it, and we use it consciously. And when we do so, we become co-creators in our life experience. Since the whole process of a spiritual treatment is an activity of thought, it follows that the one thinking must consciously be aware that his treatment will be effective. In other words, not only do we have an acceptance of it, but we have to have an understanding of an intention, of expectation, that it's going to demonstrate, that it's going to manifest. That's such a shift in how we address our world experience, that we're not asking for something, but we're making a declaration with an expectation of it unfolding in our life. But there's many people that in New Thought and in Science of Mind, that they get to this point, and there's just It's like they can't make that final connection, and they don't understand. Oftentimes they get discouraged and they walk away. So stick with us today, because we're going to talk about some of the things that can happen to us, that can change when we seek to make those kind of changes within ourselves, within our mindset, to be in a consciousness of greater acceptance. And as we have a greater acceptance, we can grow our belief in an understanding of a demonstration of the divine principle working itself out in our life. It says, although we are surrounded by divine intelligence, love, and wisdom, and I want you to pay attention to these words, divine intelligence, love particularly, and wisdom, we may lack an actual higher guidance because we lack a higher acceptance of such guidance. We can be aware intellectually of this divine principle, but if we don't have a higher level of acceptance of it unfolding in our lives, if we just have an intellectual understanding of it, then it's just something in a textbook, basically. It's something to talk about. We can have discussions about it. But that's not the purpose of a philosophy of faith and a way of life. It is a way of life. It is something that we can live moment to moment, that we were designed, that we were created to live in our life experience. And as we open ourselves up to that, as we open ourselves up to the consciousness that God is an all-present love that is available to us, that is a power for creation that is available to us, that, as Jesus said, it's done unto us at the level of our belief. And when we speak our words, God knows our request or our statement before we speak those words actually. And again, as we get to this idea, this concept of judgment, keep that in mind today. He says, the greatest conviction, or the greater the conviction, the more power our word will have. We should act as though we already have dominion over what he calls evil. And when he talks about evil, he's talking about anything that is not in accord with divine principle. That can be lack, it can be poverty, it can be disease, it can be what we experience is evil in the world, for example. And these are all things that we come into this life with kind of a blank slate, if you will, but the world is already kind of pre-written on that blank slate through the consciousness of our family, our societies, oftentimes what we call race consciousness, things that influence us as we grow up. And we get so ingrained and entrenched in the materialism of the world, the materialistic world, that becomes our true reality. And sometimes things happen, and it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. We begin to seek for something other than. Oftentimes we feel it as an urge within ourselves to experience something greater than. Oftentimes it's just serendipitous, we happen upon something. But the end result is that there is that which is within us, and you can call it the God within us, the Christ consciousness within it, you can call it whatever you want, but there's that within each and every human being that desires to express itself through the life experience. And as we open up, as we become aware of that, is in our day-to-day life experience. Think about this. What you're doing today, maybe watching this show, for example, what brought you here? Was it a series of events? Or are you possibly someone that is already on your spiritual journey? But somehow, some way, you ended up here today. And maybe you have a copy of The Science of Mind or other New Thought books. Maybe you've gone to New Thought centers or churches near you. Maybe this is your first experience, but somehow you ended up here today. And it wasn't an accident, because in reality, although life does come at us at the speed of life, and that's true, and we can't change what happens in the world per se, but we can change our experience in the world. And as a realization for a starting point on our spiritual journey, we begin to look for the things, the tools that we can use to create our format, our platform for interacting with the world. Not from a victim state, but from a state of creator, a state of empowerment, a state of there is a presence and a power for good in the universe that is available to me. and that no matter what life brings at me, I have a bigger experience in my relationship with the divine principle than whatever life can bring. And that relationship with that life principle is bigger, it's more powerful than anything that I can experience in life, as I understand it. It's a mindset shift that takes place within us. But we have to have an understanding. We have to become aware of it. And as I said in our last time that we began this study in the teachings of Jesus, that there are things that he taught that he wasn't the solo teacher of. But as Ernest Holmes has said so many times in so many places, that this man Jesus was very concise. He was a masterful teacher, and that's why we call him the master teacher. And as he taught these things, these fundamental tools, if you will, the principles the laws to follow in order to become empowered in our life experience, in order to realize and unfold in our life experience a situation in our consciousness where no matter what life brings at us, we have a transcendent understanding, a transcendent belief, a transcendent power within us that we can move forward, and that obstacles in life, that problems in life are not there to be things that defeat us, but are there to be challenges for us to grow and to grow over and grow beyond and to transcend. And as we do that, we strengthen, we grow, and we grow in our spiritual life experience. And that's what it's all about. And that's what excites me about teaching this, sharing this idea, this concept. I'm going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to start with the concept of judgment. And I'll see you then.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
This 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Clovis is now for sale. Nestled on a cul-de-sac in a planned unit development, the quiet neighborhood is near Sierra Vista Mall, grocery stores, and Clovis Unified Schools. This well-maintained home featuring an open kitchen with a breakfast bar, dining area, a family room with fireplace, ceiling fans, vaulted ceilings, and inside laundry room. The large master suite has 2 large closets, a roomy bathroom with shower, and exterior door leading to the patio. Located near the intersection of Gettysburg and Fowler Avenue, call Mike Briggs Properties at 559-486-6758 to buy this home today.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Moving forward, before I actually get to the segment, section on judgment, in the final conclusion at the end of the general summary, Ernest Holmes says, in conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him or her repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. This is where the rubber meets the road, if you will, is the doingness. It's putting the principle into practice in your life. I appreciate that you're here watching the show today, but I would appreciate it more if you'll take what you can away from today, or if you go to the archive on YouTube and look up some of the other shows, things that you can put into practice in your life, or maybe, reach out to a local New Thought Center near you, regardless of whether it's a religious science, a Center for Spiritual Living, a Unity, there's many others. But anyway, let's get on. So judge. Why is judgment so important? And why did I take the time today? I really want to spend a lot of time on judgment. Well, one of the things that we know is that in New Thought, and you can go in the textbook to page 402, and Holmes, he says that, well, I'm not going to spend the time. He says there that the law knows us at the level we know ourselves, and you'll find in his writings elsewhere where he says God knows us at the level we know ourselves. And we have to understand what that means to begin with. You see, people think that with God being infinite and all-knowing, that God would know us and know beyond ourselves. But the truth is, we are unfolding beings within the consciousness of the divine, within the consciousness of God, if you will. And so at the level that we know ourselves, that's really all that there is of us to be known at this point in time. Who we are, what we believe ourselves to be, and all the stuff that we have. And that stuff oftentimes includes our story. And we've often talked about our story. Our story, oftentimes we hold it as being very important in how we self-identify. But our story is in the past. Right now, in this moment, the only thing that exists is us, here and now. But in this us, here and now, we are also the divine principle expressing as us here and now. And we're not limited except by our beliefs. And if we use our story to define who we are, then we become and we believe that that is who we are. And we limit the possibility of what we can be. If we take our story and we put it into the library of our life experience, but we don't let it own us, then we can be in this moment, in the moment, present, and we can be open to and accepting a greater good in our life experience. So what does this have to do with judgment? What does this have to do with God knowing us at the level we know ourselves? Well, here's the thing. Historically, there's so many people in their spiritual traditions that have been taught that the divine principle, that which we call God, is a very judgmental being. I mean, we've got the whole list, the whole heaven and hell thing. We've got various and variations on that theme throughout many of the spiritual teachings. But God is not judgmental. God doesn't really know judgment. The only judgment that God knows is the judgment that we know ourselves. And this is why, and I'm going to go back and I want to read this, because this is, although this is written and it's from the Scofield Bible translation, so it's a little, the language is a little antiquated. We're going to go through this. Judge not, that you would not be judged, for with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. The judgment that you bring is the judgment that you bring into the world, into your experience. And that's the teaching from this. Judge not, because whatever judgment you bring, it is at that level that God knows you, and that judgment becomes a part of your life experience. Now, the divine principle doesn't judge, but because we bring judgment within ourselves into the world, we subject ourselves, because life mirrors back to us what it is that we believe and what we hold, we subject ourselves to that judgment. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you've been carrying a lot of stuff around in your heart, your mind, where you have self-judged that you're unworthy or you're not enough, and the list goes on, that you look out in the world and you see yourself as a less than because, and you can fill in whatever you want after the because, and maybe it goes back to your story. But imagine, if you will, that you could just drop all that right now, that you could let it go. But the key is you got to let go of the judgment, because the judgment that you hold is the same judgment that life is mirroring back to you. And he says here, by what measure that you measure, it shall be measured against you. Now, this was the teaching of the master teacher. But Holmes refers us back to that because that teaching is what locks us up into this whole concept. Now, we get the big picture on judgment. I mean, we can think about people and all this sort of stuff, right? But think about the little things where we use judgment, you know? Think about it. All these little things. And they all reflect back on us. When we can begin to let go in all areas, when we can open ourselves up, our hearts, our minds, our beingness, to instead of a reflection or an interchange with the world from a position of judgment, to an interchange, to the world from a position of acceptance. That we can accept the what is as the what is. When we do that, when we vest ourselves in this now moment, when we realize that the divine principle is expressing through us, that there's one life, one present, one power that is available to us at the level of our belief, and we can let go of judgment and replace it with acceptance. Acceptance. What is it that we're looking to accept? Well, let's go back to what we talked about when I was reading out of Living the Science of Mind. Wisdom, love. We're talking about God's gift to us. Is wisdom, is love, is life, is abundance. You say, well, wait a second. I'm not seeing abundance in my life. Probably not. You can pick the areas where you're not, whether it be health, relationship, whether it be finances, doesn't make any difference. Look at what life is mirroring back to you. Then look at where it is that maybe you hold a little judgment, maybe limiting beliefs, maybe a little, maybe a lot. But you say, there's so much wrong in the world. You know, how can we look out into the world and not see all the wrong in the world? However we define wrong. And we've got to fight that. We've got to resist that. And that's actually the wrong way to go about changing the world. You know, there's a story that goes something to the effect that when Gandhi was alive, there was a woman that brought her child to the teacher, and she said, I want you to tell him that he is not to eat sugar. And Gandhi, he looked at the woman, he looked at the child, and he asked her to come back in a month. And it was a rather arduous trip for her to get there. She was a little frustrated having to do that, but she took her child home, and a month later she shows back up, and Gandhi looks at the child, and he says, don't eat sugar. Mother gets a little irritated. She says, why did you have me come back in a month for you to just tell him that? Gandhi said, because when you asked me to tell him that, I was still eating sugar. What we bring into the world is what the world is going to bring back at us. So if we bring judgment into the world, if we bring anger into the world, if we bring hostility into the world, what we're doing is we're actually separating ourselves from the greater truth of what the world is. The world is a creation of spirit. The spirit is a oneness. And every time we create a consciousness, an idea, an understanding of judgment, what we've done is we've put ourselves in a position of us versus whatever, us versus. And if there's us versus within this greater unity, the only separateness that exists is the separateness that we have created within our own hearts, within our own minds. We want to experience a more abundant life. We want to experience a life more full of love. We want to experience a life of more harmony. We got to do it here. It's an amazing thing, and it's a concept that a lot of people they struggle with because they want to run out and change the world. They need to sit down and change themselves, and the world will change. It's an amazing thing. You know, there was a fellow, his name was Ken Keyes is how I pronounced it, but he wrote a book called The 100th Monkey. And the story of the 100th monkey was that there were these monkeys on some islands off the coast of Japan, and they were dropping them sweet potatoes from a helicopter or something, and they'd land in the sand, and the monkeys would eat the sweet potatoes, but there was sand in them. And one day, one of the sweet potatoes landed in water, and the monkey that grabbed it ate it, and it didn't have sand in it. So the next time the sweet potatoes were dropped, it took one that had sand on it and it washed it in the water. It was cool. So some of the other monkeys saw that and they began doing that. And, pretty soon a lot of the monkeys were doing it. And the idea of the 100th monkey is more metaphorical than it is reality. But at some point, there was a point where there was monkeys that learned to wash the sweet potatoes in the water so they wouldn't have to eat sand. And then there was the next time, that next consciousness, that one more monkey, that 100th monkey, if you will. When it happened to that monkey, all the other monkeys on the island knew it, as if it just happened to them. It's amazing, right? No, what was really amazing is they looked out to the other islands. It happened there too. There is something about a commonality of collective consciousness that when you reach a certain level in the greater whole, you create a shift in the consciousness of the whole. Now, Ernest Holmes believed this, and he taught this. He believed that at some point, the concepts, the ideas of up-leveling consciousness and our understanding of our place in the universe and the world and our whole idea of oneness, a unity. And he believed that when a certain percentage of the world population got to that point of understanding and believing that, regardless of what their personal spiritual faith tradition may have been. But when we get to that level, that percentage of the consciousness, that the consciousness of the world will change. Without anybody going out and telling the world how to change, it will change. There's been other research that has verified that. There's a fellow by the name of Rupert Sheldrake. He wrote The Science of Living, I believe. He's a British biologist, biophysicist, or something like that. And he noted the same type of thing. And he talks about something that he calls the morphogenic field. And it doesn't make any difference what you call it, but there's a generalized consciousness of which we're all a part of, a oneness. So you want to change the world, you want to see peace in the world, you want to see harmony in the world, you want to see abundance and love in the world. I know materialism tells us that the best way to do that is to take up our arms and go out into the world and demand change. But the divine principle tells us that we go within ourselves. And so as we make that journey within ourselves, understanding the role of judgment as it plays in our life, going back to just this statement, judge not, lest ye be judged. By whatever measure you judge, by that measure you shall be judged, has nothing to do with anything other than what you or I bring into the world with our own judgment. Because the divine principle, knows us at the level that we know ourselves. And if we know ourselves as separate beings, that we have looked out into the world and we have declared some things okay and some things not okay through our judgment, that we have created more conflict in the world to be experienced by all. It's a powerful idea, but we can change it. That was part of the teachings that this man brought into the world. So we're going to come back in the next segment. I'm going to go over a little bit more of this thing on judgment, and then I'm going to move forward to some other stuff in the book. So I'll see you when we get back.
I'm Greg Steen, your host for the Truth for Seniors show. Glad you're joining us today and coming to you from Central Valley Talk in the heart of Fresno. So every Wednesday at 2 you can find us, and we'll be here giving you the most up-to-date and accurate information possible, bringing you experts, as we promised, from lots of different fields related to seniors, senior needs, the caregiver needs, and everything that goes with that. So if you're looking for the right information and timely information, this is the place to be.
Harness the power of the sun and cut your electric bill down to size with Soltech Solar. Call today and request a free quote at 559-325-6907 or visit soltechsolar.com.
Certifying foster homes for placement of children suffering from abuse, neglect, and abandonment. To help, contact Lisa Caceres with Angels of Grace at 559-268-0000.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. I'm talking about judgment right now, talking about the teachings of Jesus. In this section here in the Science of Mind book, we see where Holmes writes, he says, the law of cause and effect is immutable, and every man's actions produces an effect in his life, which he must ultimately experience unless he transcends the law already set in motion. He transcends the law already set in motion. Such a concept supposes that we are surrounded by a universal law, which is entirely impartial and which returns to the thinker the logical effect of his action. Of course, he's speaking in the vernacular there of his times, his or her, just kind of bear with the language. I'm going to go back here now. It says, the law knows us as we first know ourselves. We make up its mind because its mind is subjective. I want to tie that together here, okay? So, here's the deal. We can create a life for ourselves of peace, harmony, love, and abundance. We can create these things for ourselves, and that's part of the attraction, if you will, for people that come to New Thought. The idea, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to live a life more productively, more in harmony, with more abundance. As a matter of fact, that's what we were created to do. That God created us not to just live and exist, but to live our life and to express our life maximally as individuals. And I say maximally as individuals because we're not the same. The gifts that each of us have, our ability to express in this life. Some of us have great musical gifts, some of us intellectual gifts, some of us have gifts of healing, and you can go on and on and on. The things that are individual to us, but unfortunately, and the tragedy is most people live their lives unaware of the truth of who they are. They live their lives according to the dictates of a materialistic reality. When they begin to realize that they're not a material being in a material reality, but they are a spiritual being in a spiritual universe that is all encompassed within a concept, a reality of a divine principle that we call God, that we can live our lives at such a different level. And when we do so in harmony with divine principle, that we don't just prosper ourselves, but we prosper those around us, and we prosper the world in general. And going back to what I was talking about in the last segment, the understanding is changing the world doesn't start by going out and telling the world, other people in the world, how to change it. It starts with changing the world within ourselves. And as we do so, the world around us begins to change, and from that out to others and to others and to others. Everybody should live a life that is self-satisfying. Everybody should live a life in harmony. That's what God meant for all of us to do. And that's when this teacher came to the world and taught, or when other spiritual leaders came to the world and taught, underlying all that they taught this is the foundation, that we were created to live life and live life prosperously and abundantly. The Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree and he developed his Four Noble Truths, and the first truth, as he understood it, is all life is suffering, and we suffer because we're attached to the material part of life. And he goes on to the other two, that we can transcend it, and the fourth one is we follow the Eight Noble Path. If we look at life as suffering, then we'll experience suffering. If we look at life as a struggle that is a challenge for us, now it's a shift in mindset, but we don't grow when we sit. We grow when we have something to struggle against, whether it's growing in learning, whether it's growing in learning how to walk, whether it's growing in learning how to be a musician, whether it's growing in our spiritual walk. We grow when we push against the status quo. We create a greater world, not by telling the world how to change, but we create a greater world by growing within ourselves. And as we do, the world changes. That's the point of this. And this is the point I'm trying to make, that we have to give up judgment. We have to align ourselves with divine principle. That when we do, if we can give up our fear of how things may be if we're not out there with our finger in the pot, instead of embracing and accepting the good that has been presented for us in potentiality when we open ourselves up to it. That when we pray believing that our Father, the divine principle, will answer, knows our heart, okay? When we align ourselves with principle. Judgment is such a big thing that we have to give up. Hate is based on judgment. Worry is based on judgment. So many things that we classify as evil are in this world because of simple judgment of one individual or one group upon or towards another. Imagine what it would be like if we all just, instead of living in a world of judgment, lived in a world of acceptance. Not in a world of being a doormat. That's not my point. We can be strong in our faith, we can be strong in our belief, and we can be firm in our love. Parents sometimes have to be rather rough with children at some level to teach them lessons so that they won't hurt themselves if they continue to do something that is self-destructive. We have a bigger father, if you will, or mother, God, goddess, that has put us here and said, you're going to have to do it on your own. You're going to have to grow. You're going to have to struggle. But struggle does not have to be suffering. Suffering is a mindset. My wife has a friend that he has a motto that he lives by. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Life is going to present us with pain. But in that pain, we can transcend whatever happened. Things happen. Life happens. But how we react to that or respond to that will determine our life experience. In the long run, nothing judges us but the immutable law of cause and effect. What judgment we bring into the world is the judgment that comes back upon us. Whoever deserves punishment will receive it. The law of karma. It's a very interesting thing, but it's not a absolute. When we've done something, when we've presented something to the world that is less than positive, and most of us have done that at some level, we're subject to that coming back to us, no doubt, unless we transcend our old consciousness. And by doing that, by transcending our own consciousness, we change our place within our position within the law, if you will. That's not an out. It may mean that we have amends to make. It may mean we have forgiveness work to do. But it is available to each and every one of us as we do that. So, going to wrap that up for now on that part of it. I want to move forward. When he talks in the next section, he talks about religious morbidities. He says, those who have made a study of soul analysis are aware that poisonous secretions in the body are often the result of religious morbidities. When we allow our spiritual life to be tagged or associated or a part of things that are in opposition to the goodness and the godness that we present into the world, it's no different than any other negativity that we bring into our consciousness. And it's really interesting. There was a time when medical science didn't really understand that negative thinking can create negative issues within the body. And they didn't believe that positive thinking or having a positive consciousness could actually improve the healing process. Today they know vastly different. And in many approaches to a lot of the disease conditions that medical science treats today, they incorporate some way of addressing consciousness mindset of the patient to help in their healing process. It's very powerful, very important, okay? He says, talking about evil, and this falls in this idea of religious morbidities, because there are religions that teach that there is an entity in the world of evil, okay? If you understand the divine principle as being infinite and everywhere present, and if it is in fact love and goodness, which I believe it is, there is no place, no space for this thing called evil. And yet we do experience, no doubt about it, we experience things in the world that we define as evil. They're not nice, they're not good, they're very ugly, and they can be problematical. But the truth behind them is not that they exist within an entity, but that they exist within a consciousness that defines itself as separate from the divine principle. Sad things happen when people separate themselves in their minds and hearts from God, or if they see their God as a separateness from the rest of the world. It's same effect, okay? So he says, we do not say there is no evil experience. We say evil is not an entity, but a misuse of a power which of itself is good. And that's something we got to understand, that we have this power that is available to us. And in truth, we use it all the time. You use it, I use it, but we can either use it in ignorance or we can use it in consciousness, awareness. And how we play that out determines how it unfolds in our life. So I'm come up, looks like our last break, so we're going to take our last break and we'll come back and we'll move forward. I'm probably not going to get through all this today, but I'm going to do this over the next couple of lessons. So I'll see you when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732. Vote for Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council in District 3. Over the last decade, Miguel has collaborated with residents, public institutions, and business leaders to improve public safety, increase education access and success, and increase workforce training and jobs. As Fresno City Councilman, Miguel Arias will build upon this track record of success. Learn more at miguelariasforcouncil.com.
This message is paid for and approved by Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council 2018.
At Laulea Travels, we strive to make your vacation experience as relaxing as possible. From the time you start dreaming about it to the time you're sharing your vacation photos with your friends and coworkers. Our vow is to treat your vacation as if it were our own. If personal service, attention to detail, and years of travel experience are important to you, then let Laulea Travels plan your next dream vacation. Visit lauleatravels.com or call 559-360-1933.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. So we're wrapping up today, and I'll be moving forward for the next couple of shows from the teachings of Jesus in the Science of Mind book. We call it the textbook. If you happen to have a copy, go ahead and read ahead. And as we go through the shows, you can work with us. This section that I'm going to close with today kind of wraps up what I've kind of generally talked about throughout the show. But it's very important. People oftentimes get so wound up in the idea of doing treatment and having a need to see demonstrations, if you will, and being very actively in consciousness working this around themselves, right? And then when things don't happen, they begin to wonder, well, maybe it doesn't work or there's something wrong. It's always working. It never does not work. But we have to put ourselves in proper perspective against this infinite power that is available to us. And part of it is understanding that as a part of a oneness, a divine goodness, that whatever we hold within ourselves that keeps us in discord with that, if you will, tends to work against us somehow. When we speak our word, when we're giving a treatment, and in the last part of in Science of Mind, in what we call the affirmative prayer treatment, that last part, when we say we let go and we give it up to God, that's an extremely important part of our treatment. We speak our word, we say we give it up to God, and then we begin to look for the demonstration or the manifestation. We should speak our word with expectation. We should speak our word with an understanding of a greater truth. But we should also speak our word knowing that as we are speaking our word, the divine already knows it before we've spoken those words, and that the demonstration is already there. When we know, and we know that we know it's there, we don't worry about it. We don't wonder about it. We don't look for it. It's going to show up. It's like knowing that the sun's going to rise tomorrow morning. We don't worry about it. We don't look for it. We just know it's going to happen, and it does. It's the same, not a great metaphor, but it's the same kind of thing. But closing today, this is very important. Holmes writes, self-healing must come first of all. We can create an amazing world for ourselves, an amazing life experience, but we have to take responsibility for our life and our life experience. And so we have to start with self-healing. And he says, if we think we can guide our brother aright, while our own feet still walk in darkness, we are mistaken. We must first clarify our own vision. We got to get it straight within our minds, our hearts, and our beingness. And then we shall become as lights, lighting the way for others. And it's an amazing thing about light. It doesn't tell us. It just shows us. It shows us by its very beingness. And that's the connection there. He says, but can we teach a lesson we have not learned? Can we give that which we do not possess? To suppose so is hypocrisy, a thing to be shunned. Jesus tears the mantle off of unreality from the shoulders of hypocrisy, winnowing from the soul of sham and shallowness its last shard of illusion. We cannot see reality until our eyes are open, until the light of the eternal truth has struck deeply into our own souls. Has struck deeply into our own souls. It's an amazing idea. The idea that that light exists within us. There's a light within us that we can turn up and we can express it out into the world. It's a spiritual light. It's a light that we have seen sometimes in others. It's a light that Jesus brought into the world 2,000 years ago. It's a light that Buddha brought into the world 3,000 years ago. It's a light that we see in some people today. Unfortunately, today we don't see that light as well as we could, as well as we should, because so many people are out there telling the world what it should be doing instead of working on creating that greater light within themselves. So today, as we come to the end of our talk today, the show, I spent this time, a lot of this on judgment and our personal responsibility, our personal role in our own creative life experience. You are meant to have a life of goodness. You are meant to have a life of abundance. You are meant to have a life of peace and harmony and happiness. But you have got to find the truth of where that can be found. You've got to give up telling others what they need to do in order to make you happy and realize that the happiness that you seek exists within you already, that spiritual soul that exists within you, that fire that burns within you, that light that God has put there in each and every one of us, was there for us not to hide, not to turn our backs on, but to grow, to grow, and to grow. And as we do that, no matter what life brings to us, no matter what happens, we realize we have a bigger God, we have a bigger experience, we have a greater goodness, that it's all divine principle unfolding, that life is eternal, that our presence in this life is the gift that was given to us, and our gift back to the divine principle is to take that gift and to use it maximally, to create a greater good within ourselves, and thus we create a greater world. You know, the power of new thought, the power of science of mind and spirit, as a faith, it's a philosophy, but it's a way of life, a way of living. We create within ourselves that consciousness, that alignment with goodness. We give up our judgment. We open ourselves up to an acceptance of all of God's goodness. Man, the world changes. It changes in amazing ways. But it can't be taught. I can share it with you. But you got to do it yourself. You got to experience it yourself. You got to know that the gift was given to you personally. So extremely personally that no one else can touch it but you. And when you do, as you begin to do that, you'll begin to be aware of it. That's what Holmes talked about when he talked about experiencing the divine. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about today. And you can go back and see the last show that we did before this one, and we'll put these up, and I'll tag them, 1, 2, 3, so that you can go through them. But know that you have a purpose here. You're not here to just be an individual, to be lost within the nothingness of all the materialism that surrounds you. You have a purpose. You have a purpose that was gifted to you before life began. Some of us can find our purpose and begin to live it, and some of us, we may have to extend our journey a little bit longer in order to find it. But we're all going to get there. We're all going to get there. There's just a oneness. There's not a two-ness or a three-ness. There's not a material world and a spiritual world. The material world is a what we call a physical expression of a spiritual truth. But it's the spiritual truth that's behind it all. I've shared with you in shows past the idea or the understanding that there's so much going on in science today that in so many ways validates what we teach and what we understand. But that's really not as important as you validating for yourself the experience. So I want to encourage you. You can go online. You can find a lot of New Thought books online that are from the pioneers of New Thought. With Amazon, you can get most any book that you want or whatever. But you can find local New Thought centers. You can find teachers. You can email me. My email shows up here at the bottom of the show banner, and you can check in with us on Facebook. I do answer Facebook messages, and I want to encourage you to take responsibility for your day-to-day life experience in such a way that you can begin to see, believe, and know and understand that not only is this thing that we call goodness, godness available to you, but it really is in truth expressing through you. It's awesome when you begin to see that. It's even more awesome when you begin to put it into practice in your life. So we'll pick this up next week. From here, as you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, and the power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you no matter where you're at. God is there. All is well. I hope to see you again soon. Take care, my friends. Have a good week.